One thing that's pretty telling is that she hasn't insulted you at all once, and you've said idiot like 4 times. Well, I'm just saying you're talking. You're talking about yourself like you're like this master debater, like a masturbator, so to speak.
Oh, that was a clever turn of phrase. Can you explain it? What does that mean?
So what I'm trying to say is that like you're acting like you're like this exalted like debater in comparison to her, that you're the grown man and she's the child.
That's because it's true.
It's not true. She's over 18.
Really?
So
no, I'm saying that I'm the master debater.
Jay,
but you're not.
Let other people speak.
Well,
like,
she
but
said
you're
I
not.
wasn't
But
the
then
master.
I don't know. Like, but then you're calling her an idiot. She's not an idiot. She's not an idiot. It doesn't make sense to you.
No.
It makes sense to me. It doesn't
make sense.
It makes sense
yesterday,
but not to you.
Well, yesterday it makes sense to about 100,000.
I'm pretty sure after the show.
Who cares? She's not talking to them. She's talking to you.
No, we are talking to that.
After the show, Brian explicitly asked you to do a lot less of this behavior. He explicitly asked you to do this because it was taking away from the quality of content. This is just a conversation that we all had.
Taking away from what?
The quality of the content.
It was like
Brian.
It was a look. No, here's what I said to Jay. I said, look, tomorrow you're a debater, right? You're a debater.
Mm-hmm.
We're bringing on a panel of guests who are not debaters. And I was like, they don't know how, they're not debaters. They're just here to have conversation. And I was letting Jay know, maybe we don't do certain, debate stuff to the non-debaters. Because
interrupting all the time.
Not to you.
But you're the debater.
You're the debater.
You did not make an exceptional rule that they could be just as obnoxious like this with me, but not with everyone else. And you and I both know that, Brian.
You don't think you're obnoxious?
I didn't say that I'm not obnoxious. I said
obnoxious.
you guys are being obnoxious.
As the host, as the moderator, I would personally, although I find it a bit amusing, the insults and whatnot, and it'd be nice if you guys didn't insult each other. You know what, Jay? Can you say one nice thing about Kyla? And then Kyla, say one nice thing about Jay, maybe?
We're not acting like this is an equal engagement of problems.
Okay, then Jay, do you want to say something nice?
I also think that you think she's obnoxious because she's not submitting to you.
No, we had a whole debate yesterday.
He was mad because after the debate, we were like having a good conversation, and I told him I was disappointed.
Kyla's not submitting to you.
I think he's mad because yesterday after the debate, I told him I was
not mad. This is literally how
you've been like subtweeting and retweeting me all day. I know that you're.
Can you tilt your mic down a little bit?
You mean
Boosted Coyote?
One time when I said a diarrhea joke.
Leave it up.
No,
that was funny. That was before the debate.
Right,
I made
a diarrhea joke.
Yeah, that was good. I bantered with you on that.
I made a joke about your relativism. That's it. Okay. The other clips are clips. They're not you. Sorry.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Boosted Coyote. To mute a microphone is $500 through streamlabs.com/whatever. If you want to mute a microphone, just throwing it out there. I don't know how we got there. What were objectification.
Yeah.
Who of the women here at the table feel like they are or have been objectified? And the men can also raise their hands.
I think it's good. I don't care.
You're in favor of objectification?
We always objectify.
I've been objectified.
Yeah, everyone objectifies others all the time. It's just when you remove.
I'm sure Jay here
probably
gets it all the time.
He's a handsome guy. He's got a good head of hair. Especially for 40. That's incredible.
You said something nice.
I said something nice about you yesterday. I'm not interested in being like nasty all the time.
Okay. Jimbob, do you get objectified? You're handsome fella.
No, I mean, isn't making fun of people objectifying them? Even like, because people think objectify, they look at it and it's like, I want that. Usually it's always a good thing, but are you being objectified if you make fun of someone's body?
Kind of.
Yeah. So yeah, people make fun of me.
Oh.
So
your wife objectifies you.
It was a joke, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good times. Okay. What's your type?
That's a great question. I would say usually tall, tan, Italian looking, physical,
okay.
and then personality wise, like a hot mess.
Italian. Wait, personality hot mess.
Yeah.
But Italian looking.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Jimbob's Italian. Is he? But he's married. He's married.
Hot mess?
Is he your type? If he was single.
Respectfully, no.
I'm sorry, Jimbob. I'm sorry. Okay. So Italian. Wait, just some points of clarification here. You just said you're you're liberal?
I would say like there's a lot of liberal ideas that I have, but I definitely lean more towards the middle left.
Okay, middle left. But you said, and in your notes here, you also wrote you're very old school and traditional.
When it comes to that.
Comes to
baby mama.
Dating?
Just having children outside of marriage. I don't understand.
Oh, okay. Just having kids out of marriage. When it comes to you, and this is what you wrote, you said you're very old school and traditional. Can you be, I guess, specific and give detail? How are you old school and traditional?
When it comes to marriage, I think if you want to be married, like that's to me, marriage is traditional. Like you want to have children, you want to build a family. To me, that just seems reasonable. That seems like the best way to raise a family. To have children outside of a marriage, I think it's like so shoved down our pop culture ideas that like we should have. Women should be able to do whatever they want. They can have kids outside of marriage. It's fine. I don't think that, to me personally, that's just not really in my vocabulary.
So that's your view when it comes to having children outside of marriage, your desire. I assume you want to get married.
Yes, but that's not my priority.
What's your priority?
My career.
Okay, gotcha. And remind me, you're 28?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
How could you expect the traditional element if you're not preparing yourself to be in that situation?
I don't think I'm ready to be a mother or a wife quite yet. I haven't found the right person. And the last thing I would want to do is get into an awful, unrealistic marriage that leads to divorce and to have children just because I felt pressured to have children.
But if you're not preparing yourself for that type of a lifestyle, do you think that you'll just suddenly turn traditional when you're ready to get married?
No, I think there's a lot of healing that I need to do within myself. I would want to raise a great family. I want to have kids like maybe in the future, but I don't in a good mindset and a healthy lifestyle. And I am still traditional. I'm not just talking about myself. I think women and men should be in committed relationships to have children, not just talking about myself. I'm just talking about in general.
When you said I haven't found the right person, doesn't that imply that the right person is already traditional?
I wouldn't say so. I'm sorry, can you clarify?
So
that?
You're like, I don't want to get married yet. I don't think I found the right person. Just that part of it. Wouldn't the right person assume that he's already traditional and wants to have kids?
I hope so. I would also love if they didn't feel pressure to have a family. And maybe if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It shouldn't be like a pressure of like, I want kids and you need to provide me kids. But if it happens, that's an amazing life.
The reason I ask that is because, like, I don't understand this. Like women, they want to find the right guy, right? Like a high value man, they call it, fits all these criterias. When you find that man, why are you what do you do with that man, right? If your current view of dating is simply just to like have fun, it's like I always ask these people, same thing, it goes back on the men too. They want to find the right woman, and I always ask why. Then what do you do? Because the only answer to me that makes any sense is to marry and potentially have a family, to build something. So I'm wondering what all of this dating is, if ultimately both the men and the women are looking for the right man, right? But for what? Or the man is looking for the right woman, for what? Like if it's not for marriage, I'm not sure. What is it, like a temporary like chapter in life, you know? Like
I think people come and go in your life. In my honest opinion, I'm very spiritual. I think people don't just come to your life for no reason. There's always something that they provide for you. So even if they're not in a marriage or end up in a long-term relationship, I learned something from them. I'm not always out here like, he's the one. Is he going to be the one? No. I mean, if it is, that's great. I take a lot of accountability that I am a hot mess myself when it comes to dating, which is why I don't attract the best kind of individuals when I date. But
that's what I like to back to what Jay said, and this is pretty much for everyone, is that if in the future you see, especially as a women, because you guys have a time constraint, if you see in the future that you'll probably want to be married, you actually have to start that traditional practice of being that woman before you actually find the husband. That's why I asked, wouldn't the future husband already have the mindset of being traditional, like finding you and be like, cool, let's do this. But if you're not already living that, that's why Jay asked, what do you suddenly wake up when you find the right man and suddenly you're traditional? Like
no, I see what you're saying. What I mean? No, definitely having direction. I see what you're saying. I think, yes, the person that I would want to end up should be looking for marriage. I just don't like being pressured into things. So if I'm in a first date and he's like, I want to get married, that'd freak me out. I'd be like, I don't even know who you are. This is a first date. I would rather talk about this later on in life.
I think we're not saying you should rush into marriage, but rather that when you're married, it's a different lifestyle, and it doesn't change when you're married. Like, you have to be prepared for marriage. Yeah. So you have to begin preparing before, not that you have to rush into marriage, is what I'm saying. So in other words, you need to give up the liberal centrism if you want a traditional guy. No traditional guy wants a liberal girl. Because let me give you an example. I had a friend who dated a liberal girl back when we were in our 20s, and he wanted to marry her. I said it's not a good idea. He got her pregnant. She aborted the baby and then took off. And I think because he saw that because she had this attitude of not being traditional, that she was not going to make a good wife. She ran off, did not what he wanted, right? So if you want to, like, what you put out is what you attract, is what I'm trying to say.
Can you be more specific in like the liberal definition?
Well, I mean, you describe yourself as a left of center, I think is what you said, something like that. Yeah. But I mean, like, if I'm a guy and I'm out there and let's say for the sake of argument, I'm a high value male, maybe I'm not, but let's say that if I am, like, if I was a traditional minded guy and I wanted a wife, like, I'm going to be looking for the qualities already there, not like, can I look for the qualities already being there.
Isn't that a lot of pressure for someone though? Don't you think, like, everyone's in their own journey in creating the best version of themselves? Not everyone's going to be perfect and ready for anything in life.
What do you mean by traditional man? Like, when you describe a traditional man, what are you looking for? Because you got to make sure that I think what they're saying is, if you want to attract a certain type of fish, you got to use the right type of lure, right? And so when you say, what's the fish you're trying to attract?
Somebody, for me, there's traditionalism, but also open-mindedness, like being able to, marriage is great. That's traditional, yes, but being able to also have different ideas of pathways in life and not being so, so single-minded and thinking like this is the only path in life. Like this.
Hold on. That's like traditional pluralism though. So like, is there any tradition you can point to that has survived the test of time that didn't hold to a fairly narrow approach to what it is? Sounds like you're saying traditionalism kind of looks a certain way, like the structure looks a certain way, but ultimately, what's the tradition that's being carried through? Or is there any structure of the family, or does it just look like a family on TV? You know what I mean? Like, a tradition itself, in every sense of the word, comes from a long lineage of people that hold it together and keep it, safeguard it, protect it, keep it rigorous. So it sounds like what Kyla's asking is like, well, what is that? It sounds like it's like an image of it, but it's not the practice of it.
Do you want him to be the breadwinner? Do you want him to make more income than you?
I think that's a great question. I think if they are the breadwinner, that's great. They don't have to be. Like, I would love to make my own income as well.
Should he pay for dates? Should he be the one paying for dates?
Hopefully, yes. But
would it be an ick? Be honest. Would it be an ick if he didn't?
I would say yes.
Okay. So you want a guy who's paying for the date. You're open to economically being on the same level. So if you were dating somebody for a while and he was making like $30K less a year than you for a while, would that be okay with you? Like, say he's going to school. Is that okay with you if you're the one making the money at the time and he's going to school?
I don't think currently where I'm at right now that it's not a priority, but I think it would definitely be something that would make me want not to be with them.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So like, you're kind of wanting some traditional gender roles, like he's being at least the breadwinner mostly throughout the relationship, or at least on parity. You want him to pay for that and stuff like that. Okay. Gotcha. I just wanted to understand what you were.
What if he fits all of the checks for traditionalism that you are looking for, and the only thing he's looking for is you, in addition to your, compatibility, but the most important thing on his list is that you mother his children. That's the only thing in return he's expecting. Is the expectation that Kyla just asked of you, like, you have an expectation, right?
Okay.
But if his expectation is that an equal exchange?
I don't think so. Having a kid is so like life altering to your body, physical, mental, to a woman. That just seems to me, in like the most simplest terms, I'm giving away my life, to be honest. So a lot of the times it has to be the right person, and it has to be like when I feel like it's right. And right now I don't.
Well, yeah, the question wasn't like when of course there's a when. Sometimes you don't know when.
Okay.
Sometimes you think it's not the right time and it actually is.
Okay.
But I'm pointing to more like if you have a set of standards for the man.
Okay.
And let's say it is from every perspective looking at it, he matches all of the criteria.
Yeah.
His criteria for you is to mother the child. I'm wondering, how do you know when you're at an equal exchange? Because now you just said, well, I want the man to be traditional. I want him to pay for things. I want him to lead the way. I want him to lead the family, protect me, whatever else you add in there. But it sounds like one of the most important things for that traditional man is going to be the thing that you're actually like, whoa.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's not a equal exchange, because what is aside from that?
You don't think it's it's fair to say to have a child is like not I wouldn't compare it to me saying like provide for a date to be able to pay a bill. Like I don't think that's the same as having a
Oh no, I agree. I'm not talking about the single instance. We're looking at sort of obligation from his perspective. That's the kind of man he is. That'll follow through with protecting you, providing home, making the home, like protecting the home, everything, and fulfill. It sounds like your liberalism still kicking in, and you're like, well, I want to fly to Tahiti, right? And you're going to live your life, and that's why Jay was asking, well, what is it you're grabbing from the traditional bin from the man, and what are you providing from the traditional bin from his perspective? If it's not children, what is it? I mean, what else could it be? Like,
are you wanting to home make a lot for him? Like when you say providing children, do you just mean you don't want to give up your career for children?
Yeah, I feel like having kids, like it's selfish to not center your life around them. Like that's a huge life decision. And right now I have so much on my plate, career, financial, just everything, that I don't think it would be fair to have a kid right now, or probably in a while.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think one of the things that I think when I look at relationships, there's like these different categories and boxes of percentages that we give, right? So there's like domestic, there's income, there's emotional, and then there's also like child rearing, parenting, right? And so like in my mind, these things don't have to be 50% the whole way across, right? But they need to be, look at them. So say, for example, if the husband is expected to give like 70% of the income and you work like part-time or 3/4 of the time, I'm not sure what your workload is, or maybe you give 60% of the income. That means other areas have to flex to kind of accommodate that, right? And so I think the important question that men have to ask when they're going into a relationship is going like, well, what am I offering, and what are the type of women that I'm interested in looking for? And as a woman, you have to go, well, what am I willing to offer? And which men are interested in looking for those things, right? Because I would agree most like more conservative, super trad men, they're not as interested in like the woman's income. Most trad men are pretty open to being like 60 to 70% of the income. But what they look for in exchange would be like higher domestic labor. So like they do the income labor, woman does maybe higher domestic labor. If she's still working, it has to be back and forth.
I don't even think liberal men care about women's income.
Well, I would just disagree in the economy. Like the reality is very few men can provide for a family on one economy. Some men are like super blessed.
What I'm saying is though, I understand the arguments of like, okay, economically speaking, you need a 2-income household. That's just the economic reality for most couples. What I'm saying is that men, it's not going to make men more attracted to women. They'll do it out of economic necessity, but not like, oh, she's a high earner, I'm more attracted to her. It could be like a nice positive, for example, for a liberal guy. But I don't even think liberal men are going to be like, oh, she's more attractive because she's a high earner.
I agree. What I'm talking about is once you're in the relationship, these exchanges are going on. I think it's a disservice. So what happens when I listen to feminists and like man spheres fight with each other is women really ignore the income labor that men often do. They're just kind of like, it's like a self-assumed thing that men are bringing to the table. And then men will often ignore as well the economic labor that women are bringing in. And which is why I've listed multiple facets, because I agree, men aren't like looking at women who are making like $100,000 and being like, ooh, baby, right? They're being like, damn, she's hot. right? And like she makes me feel good when I'm with her. That's more or less what most people are doing. But once you get into the relationship, part of the exchange, if we're all being honest with each other, has to be like, who's bringing the income, where and how much, and how do we balance out the other areas? And most people say the man should be bringing in higher income. And typically one of the partners is also doing higher emotional labor to like make the relationship work.
What is emotional labor?
It depends on the couple, right? So say, for example, you've got one partner that comes in with like a lot of emotional baggage.
Sure.
So I'm going to use a man I'll use a woman for an example first, because I think people would find them more appealing, and then I can use a man. For a woman, maybe she like had a messy childhood. So she's a little bit anxious. She's more depressed. So she needs to be comforted more often.
Or you could just not date her. That's also not.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking. We're talking about like what would be the emotional labor. In the case of a man having lots of baggage, he might have lots of anger issues.
Yeah.
He might kind of stonewall and not communicate, right?
Sure.
So then the woman might have higher emotional labor to make the relationship work, because you have to be able to talk to each other and emotionally relate to one another.
Jay, it sounds like you maybe want to.
Do you do the emotional baggage in y'all's relationship? I'm just curious. Like are you the one that covers the emotional baggage?
I would say my husband is much more emotionally like solid than I am. I definitely like have a lot more baggage from my childhood.
I'm curious. I want to ask, if you don't mind, like, would you rather be in a situation where if you had an option of a dude who you liked and he made a lot of money, would you choose that if you had to be a homemaker versus your own career and out there like having to do your own thing and all that? Which would you prefer?
Naturally, I am very submissive, and I already do those things for fun. I like have fun cleaning and cooking, so it's something that but I don't look traditional, so it's.
But if you had a choice, which one would you prefer?
I would go with letting the man lead me and with the money, and I would take on the responsibility of cleaning and cooking for the home and having the baby.
So that would be a better life for you than like trying to fend for yourself in LA.
To admit it.
Okay. What about you? Would you prefer that or not?
What, being like barefoot and pregnant and taken care of?
If the option of a guy who has a lot of money that you like, you genuinely are like, he's not a butthole, right? Or like you're a career woman doing your own thing and you have like a person that meets you halfway, which would you prefer?
Can I just use my relationship? Because that's obviously who I picked. When I got into the relationship, my husband hadn't graduated high school, didn't have a job. I was already high income earning and had the greatest income prospects. But for me, I learned pretty early to really prioritize like surface stuff. I really wanted a man of character. Like that was the most important thing to me, is a man of high integrity and character, which I would say I got. Like Nick's genuinely amazing person. So for me, but I'm not saying that that's the typical woman experience. Like I recognize that I was very career motivated. And so in my mind, I did a mental calculus of going, that means I need to scale back the money expectations, because he's got to make a lot of trade-offs that aren't traditional for me. So I can't ask for the same traditional exchange. I did that when I was like 22. I just made that mental swap. But most women probably don't want to do that.
I wanted to go back to you for a second. Yeah. You lean more traditional, more submissive, but your appearances might throw people off. So when it is when you are searching for a man, what else are you going to have to do you think, to attract? Because you might attract the not that, right? I mean, is it fair to say you might attract not that?
Yes, it is fair to say that. But when I date, I kind of go off of the first approach, like how they treat me, and I don't really have a specific thing that I look for. I mean, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
It was like you lean more into traditionalism, submissive, so that it might be the case that the man you're actually looking for is actually traditional. But if your appearance can throw people off, I was wondering, what do you do to find the traditional if the appearance might throw them off?
But I don't necessarily look for what a man can offer me. It's compatibility, like how does he make me feel? If he has all of that stuff, that's great. That's fine. But if it's a struggle together, that's what we have to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What would you choose?
Oh, like the barefoot and pregnant or?
Well, it's not just barefoot and pregnant. It's also the guy that you like who has stable income, good money, right? Versus like you're on your own trying to fend for yourself. And then you find a guy that meets you halfway or something like that.
Yeah, no, like 100%. I would rather be at home taking care of kids, doing my thing there. I do not want to work at all. That's not my thing.
What about you?
No, I like working for myself.
Okay.
I'd like us to have like both our separate careers, honestly. I don't know.
I love my career so much. I would never give it up. So. Yeah.
Okay. Wait, you never give up your career? Question. But so going back to this, you said you're old school, you're traditional. Would you be submissive to your husband?
What's submission to you?
Bowing. Oh, by the way, Brian, sorry to interrupt. When I went home last week, my entire family bowed to me when I walked in the door.
Even the wife?
Everybody.
Yeah. Did you like it? Or?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, see, it's good. Basically,
I think that's a joke, right?
No, it's an actual. Yeah, they did it. Well, it's like a meme. They did it as a meme, but it was just funny.
Mormons have an oath of perfect obedience. So
I'm just curious though, because I know it's different for everyone. Submission, you know.
Yeah, willful cooperation.
Sorry, I was making a Mormon.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, basically just deferring to his leadership, willful cooperation. So yeah, deferring to his leadership. Now, for example, like I don't think submission is this. Your husband says jump off a bridge, and then you jump off a bridge. You would not be in contravention of being submissive if you're like, no, I'm not going to jump off a bridge. Or if your husband said, okay, sell these drugs or be a prostitute.
I would never be around someone like that.
What's that?
I would never be around someone like that. So.
But let me ask you this. Your husband says, well, let's say it's your boyfriend. Your boyfriend says, when we get married, you're taking my last name. Well, first off, let me ask, would you take your husband's last name?
No.
What about?
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So you wouldn't take his last name?
No.
Just to be clear, you want to get married though, right?
Eventually, yes.
Question for you. If it's the perfect guy, he's the perfect guy. Most of us won't get the perfect partner ever. Would you take his last name then?
I still think that's a no.
So question for you, would you hyphenate? Are you going to hyphenate or are you going to keep your last name?
I'd be open to it. That sounds like a compromise. I'd be
What if he's a billionaire?
No.
But he can help your career.
What if bro, you wouldn't take any man's name?
I just said I would be open to hyphenating.
Can I ask you
What
a
about
question?
your father's last name?
Well, that was by.
Let me ask you a question on a couple questions on this. So you said you're old school and traditional.
In certain aspects, not all.
Okay, so you're picking and choosing. It's like it's a buffet. You get to pick and choose. Oh, I like this. Don't like that. Well, okay, there's some criticisms there, but so okay, you're picking and choosing. So what do you consider traditional or modern? Hyphenation or like what, how do you categorize these? Hyphenation?
Yeah, that definitely.
Or what's traditional?
That would be definitely like if I was to not take his last name, that's not traditional. I can agree with that.
Okay, cool. How about this? I'm trying to think of another example here.
Would it be icky if he demanded to take your last name? He just demanded it.
I would say yeah, because that's just why do I have to do something out of demanding? Like
quite a couple questions for you. Do you want guys to pay for? I might have been gone when you guys talked about this. You want a guy to pay for first dates?
They don't have to, but if they do, that's a great look.
It's a plus. Do you want a guy who's a protector?
Yeah.
You want a guy who's a provider?
Yes, if you can.
You want a guy who's a leader?
Yes.
Okay. When it comes to the protection component, would you have an expectation, even on the first date or deeper into the relationship, that if you guys are walking along the sidewalk, that the guy is walking closer to the road where the cars are?
That's being a protector.
Protector. And would you expect this on the first date?
I would notice if he doesn't. So
okay,
yes.
But it would be something you'd want in a relationship.
Yeah, of course.
And then you'd want him to protect you in other circumstances.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to be clear, you want old school. Do you want the guy to be old school and traditional in all the ways that men are typically old school and traditional?
I guess so.
Well, you want your cake and eat it too.
Total double standard.
In the ways that benefits her. Right. And so just to be clear though, so you want a guy to essentially be willing to die for you, but you won't take his last name?
I think die for me. That's like I never said that.
But
I
isn't
said
that protecting you?
Isn't that the even the walking closer to the where the cars are in the road?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that an entailment of that very thing? Is he's willing to essentially put his life at risk to the point of death to protect you?
That's a valid question. I see your point of view, but I think at the end of the day, I would want to be with someone who would, if I said no to them and then I explained why, they would be understanding.
So you want to have the conversation. Like you want to have a conversation with the guy.
Yeah.
You want to explain to him why, despite him being traditional and old school, why he needs to accept your modernity.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what if he wants to start having conversations with you about his traditional gender expectations? For example, babe, I want to have a conversation about who's going to pay. And
Yes.
it sounds like you're okay with that one. So, but he wants to have a conversation of, I'd actually prefer if you walked closer to the road so that you could conceivably get run over by a car.
Because he's modern.
He's a modern guy.
I would not.
You wouldn't like that. Okay.
I wouldn't.
Okay. And
so you want an Italian hot mess that doesn't want you to take his last name, but is traditional in all the ways that you want. Okay.
So what does the traditional old school guy get?
What do you mean get?
Well, so if we're going to lay out some of the
you
things.
Get access to a pop star.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Rising,
there you go.
right? Access to rising pop stars.
So if we lay out the things that you want, so you want an old school traditional guy. So the entailment there is going to be protecting and providing you. I think being willing to and potentially dying for somebody, that seems like a pretty.
Return, is what you're saying.
What's that?
What do they get in return?
Yeah. What do they get that specifically you would be bringing?
Okay. I provide, I guess, the term submission. Like, I do love to be feminine. I do love to take care of people.
Okay, nurturing, sure.
Yeah, nurturing. I would say I love to cook. I'm a cooker. So,
Cooking,
I would provide that. Being able to organize.
So if he told you to make a sandwich, you would do it?
Oh, that's so rude. Like in a rude way? Like,
no, it was the most polite, charitable way one could say, make a sandwich.
Men who are like, against feminism would always say like, go make me a sandwich in the kitchen. Yes, I would say so.
Okay. And
I would cook for the man, but if he's like immediately going into the relationship expecting me to cook for him, and being like, well, you have to build trust. You can't just come into a relationship.
Wait. Build trust on the first date. He's supposed to risk his life walking you on the sidewalk.
He doesn't have to risk his life. It's nice if he would.
It's nice if you made a sandwich.
Nice if you died.
Well, if he's saying to me, "Hey, go in the kitchen and make me a sandwich," that's like rude. I feel like that's what men say.
What if he was like?
I think it's rude that he has to ask.
I mean, in this exchange, right? Like, it would be rude if she said, "Walk on the sidewalk side for me," right? Like, everyone would agree, like, "Damn, that's like fucking bitchy," right? I think we would all agree that would be like a pretty bitch move. Well, it'd also be really socially weird on a first date.
I don't know,
like,
actually.
Go make me a sandwich. I'd be like, "You have no social skills." I don't know about this.
I actually disagree with that. I think if a man was like not aware of it, and the woman was like, "What are you doing? Like, protect me." Like, I think a man would actually be responsive to that.
Yeah, maybe, but in general, I think men are a lot better at rolling with like criticism than women often are.
I'll engage with that. So I mean, okay, so you're saying the guy should just do it. Okay, so the woman should just make the sandwich.
Just to be clear, I don't give a fuck.
We shouldn't have to tell her to make the sandwich. She should just preemptively know to make the sandwich.
Well, here's where I would argue with the feminists.
She's nodding.
Here's where I'd argue with the feminist
You're
side.
in favor of the sandwich.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I would say if you have certain like traditional chivalrous expectations that would be an immediate ick if like not foreseen, and you don't give any grace in between, but you expect high levels of grace in return, you're creating a very losing situation for all men, which is shitty to do. It's a shitty thing to do. However, if you have mutual grace and discuss these things, so for example, there's lots of things that my husband will ask me to do all the time, and I'm happy to do it, right? He might just be like sitting down watching TV and be like, "Hey, can you go get me a drink?" Yeah, of course I can, right? But part of the exchange is that when he's up, I can also ask him to do the same. But that's something that we've also spoken about.
Did you take his last name?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to point out that even the way in which we're discussing this is in a very particular way. It's purely individualistic. Whereas if we're really talking about tradition, it used to be the case that women and men were actually raised that this is just, and you actually want to do it, right? Because it's part of a larger structure that's more valuable than your own individual preferences. Even as we discuss this, it's like, well, what's the contract? I think the important thing is to sit down and make a contract. And this is all modernity playing out. When we're talking about traditionalism, it's kind of a joke to ask anyone, no offense, but asking you about traditionalism, you're just like, you're taking it like it's like you're at a salad bar and you're like, here's some cucumbers. And what the traditional perspective is that the tradition is the entire room. It's not the salad. It's not the salad bar. And you're able to
change. The issue, I think the issue that we have with modernity dating is that the room is changed, right? The problem with the banquet table is that now for the man to even be able to go to the table, this is going to break down immediately. I'll just say this. In the past, men could just work and make enough money for both of them and run the household. For most
but then
men,
feminism happened.
Well,
and then all the women went into the work and then lowered the dollar.
War happened, and but if we didn't have women go into the workplace, our GDP would have never competed. And if we didn't shift away from the gold backing,
the only thing that matters, the GDP.
The GDP is so fundamental for everything when it comes to a nation state, because if you don't have a competitive GDP, your enemies are able to stomp you.
What is your nation if it's not bound in something bigger than the GDP?
It's usually bound in some level of civic nationality, which is going to be the bigger thing. But
you mean duties?
No, more like patriotism, love for country, not duties.
Yeah, but what's the identity of the country? GDP up?
No, it's American.
Why don't we swap the flag with GDP up? With a thumbs up.
I know that you think this is good because it's one of your memes, but it's nobody thinks this. GDP is important, if you don't understand, for being able to be competitive with your enemies so that they don't destroy you. When it comes to a relationship and what we're talking about, we have this issue where the economy is so different now that men can't bring to the table sole providership by and large. Some can, and those ones I think do get to make different concessions and negotiations on the relationship. But by and large, men have to say, I need you to come to the table for economic income too. And that necessarily means that women get to have more negotiation power for what the relationship looks like and what they want in return. And the problem with a lot of modern men in dating is that all they feel like they can bring is money, because unfortunately our society has attached a male's value to their dollar, their wallet, which I think is a tragedy. And I think it's bad when women do that to men. And I think it's bad when men do that to men.
But you just said the GDP is the key thing.
Yeah, GDP is really important, but that doesn't mean that
But then it's a tragedy that men's wallet matters.
It's a contradiction.
It's not a contradiction at all to say that at a nation state level, GDP is important to be competitive and not get destroyed by your enemies. But at an individual level, it's a tragedy.
Why is it a tragedy
that men's only value in a relationship is the dollars that they bring.
Let me make it clear.
But it should be more value the character that they have.
It's your value scale is arbitrary.
It's not arbitrary.
It's worse. It's actually pretty bad. Is that at the individual level it's a tragedy, but at the nation level it's the ultimate value.
Yes.
Your scale
is arbitrary. And when you argued it with me, you said it was subjective and relative and what you believe is right. And
relative doesn't mean arbitrary. These are not the same thing. These are not the same words.
If you argue that it's relative and then you make an argument, it's arbitrary.
That's not true at all.
It is. It is. No. You don't know basic philosophy.
Okay,
this was our 2-hour debate.
Presuppositionalism
that has nothing to do with whether relativism is a contradiction.
We can answer the question before. I'm sorry, I'm so tired.
You don't understand
presuppositionalism doesn't solve Agrippa's dilemma any better than foundationalism.
You've never had a philosophy class to even speak on these topics.
I know you're saying this.
But you
at this point, after watching your debate, I don't think you have a degree in philosophy because you would know that presuppositionalism does not solve Agrippa's dilemma. It relies on dogmatism.
Position.
Unfortunately, you offer coherentism as the solution to Agrippa's trilemma,
right,
but or you're not educated in it. You know that Agrippa's trilemma is not solved by presuppositionalism. It's not solved by anything.
It
is not coherentism. Does not solve dogmatism.
You don't even know. You didn't know what coherentism was until yesterday. You just learned it yesterday.
I don't have to know every single philosophical word to be able to engage.
Yeah, you should know it the day before.
Then you should probably know what equivocating means when you cited it incorrectly.
You didn't because you used feminism 2 different ways.
You cited it incorrectly. You said that it's making two things the same.
No, it's not.
When you use the same word in a different way. Then why did you cite it incorrectly against me?
I clipped you lying,
you used tu quo pro to try to claim something against me, but it's an ad hominem from hypocrisy, which you cited incorrectly too. When I was looking for confirmation bias, you cited gambler's dilemma. Gambler's dilemma has nothing to do with confirmation bias. It wasn't what I was looking for. Gambler's dilemma has everything to do from using past post-hoc information to make predictions of the future, which has nothing to do with confirmation bias. So what you do in debates is you cite a bunch of philosophically sounding words to feel impressive.
You're not talking to anybody but
you don't know what you're talking about. And you rely on presuppositionalism to stump people who don't have philosophical systems in the background. But you still, to this day, haven't solved Agrippa's trilemma. And you're stuck.
You don't even know what that is. It has to do with epistemology. I asked you what epistemology was. You didn't even know.
I said Agrippa's.
I said, what's justified true belief? Oh, tell me.
You don't know anything about these topics.
I can define it for you. It's infinite regression.
I know
it's dogmatism, and it's circular reasoning.
What we're debating.
It has everything to do with it because you're saying that relativism is arbitrary, but relativism has never been viewed as arbitrary ever. It's a philosophical
It wouldn't matter if everybody
based out of foundationalism.
That's an appeal to authority, you idiot.
It's not appeal to authority at all in any way, shape, or form.
The fact that nobody believed that is an appeal to authority because
moral
it's a
relativism is a foundationalism belief.
It's an appeal to the masses,
the reason why it's not solving Agrippa's trilemma is the same reason presuppositionalism doesn't solve Agrippa's trilemma.
You don't understand.
I do all the time.
You don't know what
it's the idea that you fundamentally cannot justify any axiom at the end of the day because that everything must be circular, including presuppositionalism.
You're repeating what you read, you idiot.
Tries to solve Agrippa's trilemma by presupposing something, but it relies on dogmatism.
This only fools idiots who follow destiny when you just yap because you think you're destiny.
Take a bet on the IQ average between Destiny's audience and your audience. Take a bet on it. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
The garbage person that you tried to dissociate
that the education level between my audience and yours is exactly
your education.
It maps onto IQ pretty well.
Oh, really?
Yep, it does.
What, like in the Canadian system that you were educated in?
He's significantly better.
That you didn't know what justified your belief? Says who?
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers.
Aren't you guys trying to destroy the Department of Education?
You ain't got the answers, Sway.
What?
Aren't you guys trying to destroy the Department of Education? So obviously the system sucks. If the system was working, then you wouldn't want to destroy it.
I ain't drinking up.
I don't believe that the state.
Fuck you saying to me, you little shit.
I wanted to ask you, Kyla.
How are you not in fucking school?
What's the
one second? Brian's got to get through his sounds.
Oh, he can hit all of them.
It's called you kiss your mother with that fucking mouth. Huh?
What's the meaningful?
Wait, I'm sorry. This is so distracting.
Because the fucking youth of society. You shut up when I'm talking to you. You shut your mouth.
Is it stuck?
Yeah, it's done.
That is so long.
What's the meaningful symmetry breaker between the tragedy of a man, his whole value being essentially the GDP of the house, and the country having that it's a good thing? It's not a tragedy that the GDP of the country is good. That's a good thing. But at the house level, which is a small country, it's a tragedy. What's a symmetry breaker that makes one good and one
ecological
tragedy?
Fallacy, right? What's good at like?
What are you saying?
You don't know what an ecological fallacy
Look,
is?
I asked you the symmetry breaker. You saying fallacy.
No, I'm answering with ecological fallacy. If you don't know what it is, that's okay. I can explain it to you.
Oh, you're so condescending. Just answer the question.
Genuine. You don't have to know all words. I actually don't think it's bad if you don't know what it is. But my answer to your question is ecological fallacy. If you want me to explain ecological fallacy, I'm willing to do so.
Cool. You do that after you answer my question?
My answer to your question is an ecological fallacy.
So you can't answer it. So you won't answer it because it's...
You don't know what that word means, do you?
Is a question a fallacy? How's a question a fallacy?
And so the question is an ecological fallacy. Yes, questions can be fallacious.
So asking for a symmetry breaker, I want to know the meaningful distinction between
the symmetry breaker is found in the ecological fallacy. Again, I can define it for you, or you can define it here. But if you want the answer,
go ahead. Agrippa's trilemma. What is that? What is Agrippa's?
It's something that she heard Destiny talk about that she
never heard Destiny talk about,
and has nothing to do with the thing that we're debating. But it's a way for her to deflect away when she gets cornered, and she does it in multiple debates. She did it in their first debate too. Okay. But it doesn't fool anybody else in the audience.
Do you want to answer
That's why
his
you
question?
can't tell me what subjectivism and relativism are, and how your position justifies.
I can answer both of those things. You're the one who thought absolutism and objectivism are the same thing when they're not
the
synonymous.
Words can mean the same thing in the
they
context.
don't mean the same thing in philosophy at all.
Yes, they do.
Do you want to answer his question on Agrippa's trilemma?
Tell me how your position is true if it's arbitrary and if it's
not arbitrary.
How is subjectivism not arbitrary?
I don't use subjectivism. You were talking about relativism.
Is the same thing.
No, it's
not. Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
You're so stupid. It's the same thing.
Okay, do you want me to
tell me how it's different?
Relativism is looking at the scale at like a group of things and finding things relative to certain points. So, for example, relativism would answer the simple philosophical question: if a man steals bread, is it bad? Relativism would go, why is he stealing bread? If you find out that he's in like a super tyrannical country and he can't feed his children, most people would agree.
Moral relativism.
There you go.
And it's purely
moral subjectivism would say, what I like to do is what is right. It is fully centered on I and the individual. Relativism looks at like the outer situation, and utilitarianism is a great example of relativism.
It's not grammar. You don't understand grammar. If I say I'm a moral relativist,
That's a subjectivist position.
It's not. I'll
You're
draw
so
it for
stupid.
you. Here, I can draw it for you so you
I
can
said
understand.
I am.
She's gonna.
So-
You understand grammar?
For those of you who
Grammar.
are not familiar
Grammar.
with philosophy, I guess I'll explain it to the ladies.
Listen to me. You're
There's
talking
an
to the ceiling.
x-axis and there's a y-axis.
If I say
on the
I-
x-axis would be absolutism.
If
and
I
that
say
would be
I am a,
relativism.
this is like talking to, she doesn't talk.
So absolutism is like, do you guys know Kant? You guys ever heard of Kant?
Hey, don't call people that.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
That's
So
so
Kant had this idea of absolutism, which is that when we come to universal laws, we should apply them to everyone equally in all ways. And the problem with absolutism is that it falls apart really quickly. And the only law that he could find that worked really well
That's
for
not
absolutism in its
position.
old
That's a-
way
no, that's
is that
Kant's a
nobody should lie.
That's a
deontologist.
threshold.
Kant's a
he would-
deontologist. It's not what you're talking about.
Deontology can be absolutist. So when we're looking at the spectrum of absolutism to relativism, relativism would say stealing is bad, but it kind of depends on the situation.
if
that's
I said
happening.
I'm
so
a
that's how we
moral
gauge it.
relativist-
So an example of relativism
Hey,
would be
I'm
like
talking to you.
utilitarianism.
If I say I'm a moral relativist, is that my subjective state?
Your statement.
Is it my subjective state? I am a moral relativist.
I don't even know what you're trying to ask here.
It's a simple question.
Well, the issue is that you're equivocating.
I am a
again.
moral relativist.
You're equivocating because
No,
you're using
I'm
the
not.
word
You don't know
subjective,
what
and in
the-
the next question, you're going to use subjective for a different purpose.
You're so stupid
So
that you
subjective
think
could
that a
mean
word-
in this
you know what a-
situation,
you know what a
your
word
personal
concept fallacy
state.
is.
But then when I answer that question, what you'll do is you'll see subjectivism is a moral system, but this is very different from one another.
No.
Do you want to
the
go into objectivism
basis-
versus
No,
subjectivism?
the
'Cause we can
basis
do
of
that next.
subjectivism is
Objectivism is like
relative.
platonic forms. Have you guys ever heard of Plato? Okay, Plato had this idea that essentially there was ideas that were true. So if we talk about
This
justice,
is like blippy philosophy.
you guys need it too, apparently. So when we talk about like justice,
Is that
Plato,
subjective or
do you want to
objective?
interrupt me or do you
is
want to
that
keep
what
going?
you're saying right now? Is that subjective or objective?
Plato's platonic
Yeah.
forms?
No, your account
He
of
used
it.
objectivism for his platonic
No, what you're
forms.
saying
Your
is, it
account
true?
subjective?
Is your account of is it subjective or objective?
Again, you're just doing an equivocation.
You
This
can't
isn't
answer
like
the
a crazy
question.
That's
gotcha.
not an
There's no answer to your
That's
question.
not an
'cause All you're doing
equivocation.
is being bad faith.
If
You're
I say-
pretending to ask
do you want
me
me
a
to fix
question
it
that's
for you?
looking to adhere to actual
Listen,
response.
I
But what you're actually doing is to
subjectively-
equivocate the
So
word
she's not gonna
afterwards so you
answer
can
any
trick me.
questions.
Do you want me to finish going through
No,
the y-axis?
No.
You don't know
Or
what
do
you're
we want to
talking
answer
about.
his question on
Nobody
Agrippa's
wants you to keep
trilemma?
talking. Nobody.
Interesting.
Nobody.
Here,
Interesting.
let-
Philosophy King's over here. by the
Nobody
way.
wants you to keep talking.
We'll come right back to the conversation, but there's a bunch of chats that we have to get to. We've kind of been stalling on them. So Alpha Pig, thank you. Coming.
Alpha Pig